A man finds an orc woman for sale. His choice changes her life forever. The thing about slave markets is that they smell exactly like what they are. Not just unwashed bodies and human waste, though there's plenty of that. It's the smell of fear turned rancid, of hope that died so long ago it started to fossilize, of dignity being sold by the pound. Leander Calloway had been to 17 cities in 3 months, and he'd walked past 4 slave markets without looking twice. He told himself it was because he had a schedule to keep. Spices don't sell themselves, and spring meant northern merchants were paying triple for southern saffron. He told himself a lot of things that helped him sleep at night. But this market was different. Not because it was cleaner or more humane. It wasn't. Different because he made the mistake of looking. She was in the back cage, the one they used for the problem merchandise. The slaves who bit, who fought, who made the mistake of reminding people that property shouldn't be able to think. The orc woman stood 7 feet tall, even with her shoulders hunched. Green skin marked with scars that told stories Leander didn't want to imagine. Her black hair hung in matted ropes around a face that might have been beautiful if it wasn't currently promising murder to anyone who got close enough. But it was her eyes that stopped Leander mid-step. Most slaves learned to make their eyes empty. Safe. A blank canvas that buyers could paint whatever fantasy they wanted. But this orc woman's eyes were still lit from the inside. Not with hope. Hope was a luxury that ended about 3 beatings ago. No, her eyes burned with something more dangerous than hope. They burned with memory. Memory of a time before cages, before chains, before a world that decided her green skin made her less than human. You interested in that one? The voice belonged to Gavril Thresh, the merchant who owned this particular slice of human misery. He was a thin man, with the kind of smile that made you want to check your coin purse. He was currently engaged in his favorite activity, cleaning his fingernails with a small, very sharp knife, the kind of man who made violence look mundane. "What's her story?" Leander heard himself ask. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake the same way you know you shouldn't touch a hot stove. But knowledge doesn't always stop stupid decisions. Thresh shrugged. Orc raiding party hit a border village 6 years back. Got separated from her unit, humans caught her. Been through 4 owners since then. First one tried to make her fight in pits. She killed 3 opponents before she started refusing. Second owner thought he could domesticate her. The way he said domesticate made Leander's stomach turn. She broke his jaw in 6 places. Third owner just wanted labor. She worked fine until she didn't. Crippled 2 overseers. And the 4th owner died in a fire. Funny thing about that fire, started in the slave quarters. Every slave escaped. Just the owner and his family burned. Thresh looked at the orc woman with something approaching professional respect. She's dangerous, smart, and she hasn't been broken yet. Honestly, she's worth more dead than alive at this point. Gonna sell her to the fighting pits in the capital if nobody takes her by sundown. At least there she'll make me money before something sharp ends her. The orc woman hadn't moved during this entire conversation. Hadn't even looked at them. Just stood there, staring at something in the middle distance. But Leander noticed her hands. They were wrapped around the bars of the cage with enough force to make her green knuckles pale. And he saw something else. Under the grime and dried blood on her left wrist, partially hidden by torn fabric, was a glint of dark metal, a band of some kind. She'd wrapped cloth and leather around it, tried to hide it. The kind of thing you hide when it's the only thing in the world that still belongs to you. How much? The words came out before Leander's brain caught up to his mouth. Thresh's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. For the orc? For Magra. Leander didn't know her name, but he knew she had one. She had to have one. You can call her whatever you want once you own her. Thresh scratched his chin with the knife blade. 80 gold. That's my final price. And honestly, you'd be better off buying literally any other slave in this market. That one's gonna end badly for someone. Probably whoever's dumb enough to buy her. 80 gold was everything Leander had made this season. It was supposed to buy him a permanent shop in the capital. A chance to stop traveling. Maybe even enough left over to think about things like settling down. Having a future that wasn't measured in miles and merchant roads. He looked at the orc woman again. She'd turned her head now, was looking directly at him. Not with hope, not with gratitude. Just looking, like she was trying to figure out what fresh hell was about to walk through her cage door. And Leander realized something that made all his careful life plans feel very small and very stupid. He realized that if he walked away right now, He'd spend the rest of his life wondering what happened to the orc woman whose eyes still remembered how to fight. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can buy isn't freedom. It's the ability to look at yourself in the mirror afterward. 80 gold, Leander said. I'll need papers. Full ownership transfer. And I want it done properly. No loopholes where you can claim her back in 6 months. Thresh's smile grew wider. You're either the kindest man I've met or the stupidest. Either way, your gold spends the same. 20 minutes later, Leander owned another human being. Well, technically, an orc, but the distinction felt like the kind of moral gymnastics people do to sleep at night. The cage door opened with a sound like the world's saddest church bell. The orc woman, Magra, he was calling her Magra until she told him otherwise, didn't move, just watched him with those burning eyes. You can come out, Leander said. His voice sounded strange, too gentle for a slave market, too human for a transaction. She didn't move. Look, I know this is... He stopped, started again. I'm not going to hurt you. And just like that, he'd said the exact wrong thing. Her eyes flashed with something that might have been rage or might have been dark humor. Hard to tell. But when she finally spoke, her voice was rough from disuse, deep, the kind of voice that came from a chest built to roar orders across battlefields. Humans always say that, right before they hurt you. She moved then, not toward freedom, toward him, and for a second Leander understood why 4 previous owners had trouble with her. She moved like violence in slow motion, like a storm deciding whether to break, but she didn't attack, just walked past him, out of the cage, into sunlight she probably hadn't seen unfiltered in months. She stood there blinking against the light. Her hands hung at her sides. She didn't run, didn't fight, just stood there like someone who'd forgotten what to do with freedom if it wasn't surrounded by walls. Come on, Leander said quietly. Let's get you somewhere that isn't here. She followed, but the way she followed made it clear. She wasn't following because he owned her. She was following because she wanted to see what happened next. And that was different. That was something. The walk through the city was educational. Educational in the way that getting kicked in the teeth teaches you about dental care. People stared. Of course they stared. A relatively well-dressed merchant walking side by side with a 7-foot orc woman in slave rags wasn't exactly subtle, but it wasn't just staring. It was the kind of looking that made judgments, that decided what you were before you opened your mouth. Mothers pulled their children closer. Shopkeepers suddenly discovered urgent business in the back of their stores. One old man made the sign against evil. Another spat on the ground as they passed. Leander felt his face burn with anger, not at Magra, at all of them. At a world that looked at a person and saw a monster. At the casual cruelty of deciding someone's worth based on the color of their skin. Magra's face didn't change at all. She just walked, eyes forward, like she'd learned a long time ago that human hate was as reliable as sunrise. Expecting it meant it hurt less when it came. They reached Leander's rented room above a tavern near the docks. It wasn't much. 1 room, a bed, a table, a window that overlooked an alley where cats had philosophical debates at 3 in the morning. But it was private, and right now privacy felt more valuable than gold. Magra stopped in the doorway, didn't enter, just stood there, looking at the room like it might contain traps. You can come in, Leander said, then realizing how that sounded. I mean, you don't have to, but there's a bed, water, food if you're hungry. And before you ask, yes, there's a lock on the door. And no, I don't have the only key. He pulled a key from his belt, held it out to her. She stared at it like it was a snake that might bite. What's the catch? Her voice was still rough, suspicious. No catch. The room's paid for 3 more days. I sleep in tavern common rooms half the time anyway. He set the key on the table. There's a bathhouse 2 streets over. I'll get you clothes. Real clothes. And we need to figure out what happens next. What happens next is you use me however you want until you get bored. Then you sell me to someone worse. She said it flatly, not angry, just stating facts. Like she was explaining that water was wet. Leander sat down heavily on the room's single chair. Suddenly felt every mile he'd traveled in the past 3 months. I'm not going to use you. I'm not going to sell you. I bought you because... He stopped. Because why? Because he felt guilty? Because he wanted to be a hero? Because somewhere between seeing her eyes and counting out his gold, He'd stopped thinking about the smart choice and started thinking about the right one. Because you saw something in that cage that reminded you you're human. He finished quietly. And I didn't want to forget. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, what's your name? Leander. Leander Calloway. And you gave me a name. Magra. Why that name? I didn't give you a name. I just... He met her eyes. You already had a name. I just didn't know it yet. Is Magra right? For the first time since he'd seen her, something shifted in her expression. Not softness, but something that wasn't quite so hard. Close enough, she said, and took the key. 3 days turned into a week turned into 2. Leander quickly learned that freeing someone and actually helping them be free were two very different problems. Magra was legally his property, which meant legally she couldn't work, couldn't own anything, couldn't exist in human society as anything except an extension of him. And Magra didn't know how to be free. She flinched when he moved too quickly, ate like someone who expected the food to be taken away, slept in the corner instead of the bed, always positioned where she could see the door. She also didn't know how to accept help. When he brought her clothes, she inspected them for 2 hours before putting them on, like she was trying to figure out what they'd cost her. When he paid the bathhouse, she asked 3 times what he wanted in return. When he did nothing, asked for nothing, she got more suspicious, not less. People don't do things for free, she said on the 5th day. They were sitting in the room, him at the table, her on the floor by the window where she could watch the street. There's always a price. Maybe, Leander said. But maybe the price is just that I can't be the kind of person who walks past someone in a cage and pretends I didn't see them. She snorted. It wasn't quite a laugh, more like the sound you make when you hear something so stupid it might actually be true. You're going to regret buying me, she said. Not cruelly, almost gently, like she was warning him about bad weather coming. Everyone does eventually. Maybe. But that's my problem, not yours. That night, she slept in the bed for the first time, still facing the door, still one hand under the pillow where she'd hidden the knife Leander had bought her, not because he thought she needed it, but because she'd asked, and saying no felt like exactly the wrong answer. Progress, he thought. Small, fragile, but progress. Esme, the herb wife, noticed Magra on day 3. Esme noticed everything, probably because she spent all day talking to plants and they were apparently excellent gossips. Esme was 70-something, built like a particularly determined root vegetable, and had exactly 0 patience for anyone's nonsense. She knocked on Leander's door at dawn with a basket of herbs and what she called a terrible feeling in her rosemary. Your rosemary told you to check on me, Leander asked, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. Don't mock the rosemary. It's seen things. Esme peered past him into the room. Magra was awake. She was always awake when someone knocked, standing in the corner, tense as a drawn bowstring. Well, Esme said, looking Magra up and down. You're a big one, aren't you? Green too. My basil said you'd be green. I thought it was being metaphorical. Magra stared at her. This tiny human woman who was talking about plants like they were people and showing exactly 0 fear of a 7-foot orc. Finally, your basil talks to you. They all do if you listen properly. You just have to be quiet enough to hear. Esme bustled past Leander into the room without invitation. You're malnourished. I can see it from here. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't designed to keep you alive and nothing else? I eat fine, Magra said, defensive. You eat like a prisoner. That's different than eating like a person. Esme started unpacking her basket. I'm making you soup, proper soup. The kind with actual vegetables and herbs that aren't just there to keep you breathing. You got a pot in this room, boy? I'm 34, Leander said. And I'm 79. You're a boy. Pot? By afternoon, the room smelled like something besides failure and uncertainty. It smelled like food, real food, the kind someone makes because they care about you, not because they need you functional. Magra sat at the table. Esme sat across from her. Leander stood by the window, watching this strange scene unfold. An orc, a herb wife, and soup that apparently had the blessing of several plants. You've got something hidden on your wrist, Esme said suddenly. Not accusatory, just observant. I can see the shape of it under all those wrappings. Magra's hand went to her left wrist instinctively. Protective. It's nothing. It's something. Otherwise, you wouldn't hide it like that. Esme took a sip of soup. I'm not asking you to show me. Just saying, whatever it is, it's important enough that you've kept it through hell and back. That means it's worth keeping. Magra was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she unwrapped the cloth and leather from her wrist. The bracelet was black iron, carved with runes that flowed like water frozen mid-stream. Even under dirt and time, you could see it had been beautiful once. Still was, if you knew how to look. It's from my clan, Magra said quietly. You get it when you complete your first hunt, when they decide you're old enough to be trusted with a weapon and a life. It means you belong, that you're part of something bigger than yourself. How old were you? Leander asked. 13 summers. I killed a mountain cat with just a spear in my teeth. There was pride in her voice, the first real pride he'd heard. My father put this on my wrist himself, said I was a hunter now, said no one could take that from me. And yet they tried, Esme said, not unkindly. They took everything else, my weapons, my clan, my name. They tried to take that too, made me answer to slave or it or greenskin. Her voice went hard. But they couldn't take this. I hid it, wrapped it in cloth, leather, anything I could find. 6 years and 4 owners, and not one of them knew it was there. That takes courage, Leander said. Keeping something of yourself when the world wants to erase you. Magra looked at him. Really looked. Like she was trying to figure out if he meant it, or if this was just more human words that sounded nice, but meant nothing. Or it's just stubbornness, she said. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Esme smiled. Stubbornness is just courage wearing work clothes. Now eat your soup before it gets cold. The carrots made a special effort. Later that night, after Esme left with promises to return with what she called proper bread, Magra spoke again, quiet in the darkness of the room. Why did you buy me? Leander had been expecting this question, had practiced answers. Something about doing the right thing, about human decency, about seeing another person in need. But in the dark, with just the two of them and the truth, he said, because I was tired of being the kind of person who looked away. And because when I saw you in that cage, I saw someone who hadn't given up. You were still fighting, even if it was just by being alive. And I guess I wanted to be the kind of person who helped the people still fighting. You know this doesn't end well, Magra said. Not a question, a statement. Maybe, but that's tomorrow's problem. Tomorrow always comes. Then we'll deal with it tomorrow. Tomorrow came faster than either of them wanted. His name was Nokhatar, the collector, and he arrived in the city 6 weeks after Leander bought Magra's freedom. He arrived with papers, legal documents that claimed Magra was stolen property, that her capture 6 years ago gave him permanent rights to her recovery. And he arrived with a necklace made of teeth. Human teeth, orc teeth, elf teeth if Leander was seeing right. Each one taken from someone who'd probably had a name once, before Nokhatar decided to wear them. They found him waiting outside the tavern one morning. 7 feet of muscle and scars, and absolutely no humanity in his eyes. He looked at Magra the way you'd look at a horse that got loose. Annoyed, but not particularly worried. Hello, Magra, he said in Orcish. His voice was gravel mixed with broken glass. It's been a long time. 6 years of chasing you across 3 kingdoms. Do you know how much time you've cost me? Magra's face went carefully blank, the same blank she'd had in the cage. But Leander saw her hand drift toward the knife at her belt. Who is this? Leander asked. This is Nokhatar, Magra said. Still in Orcish, but Leander was picking up enough to follow. He's the one who captured me the first time, sold me to my first owner. Nokhatar grinned. It was not a pleasant grin. And now I'm here to collect what's mine. You belong to me, little traitor. You were supposed to die in the raid 6 years ago, but you lived, which means you're mine to sell. She's not property, Leander said in common. Then again, in his broken Orcish, she's not thing to own. Nokhatar looked at him for the first time. Really looked. And Leander felt the weight of that gaze. This wasn't a slaver like Gavril Thresh. Thresh was a businessman. Evil, yes, but the mundane kind of evil that works in daylight and keeps books. Nokhatar was different. Nokhatar enjoyed his work. You're the human who bought her, Nokhatar said. I have papers that say you bought stolen goods, which means you owe me compensation. Return the slave, pay me 800 gold for my trouble, or I take both. I don't have 800 gold. Then I guess we're taking both. Nokhatar reached for Magra. What happened next happened fast. Magra's knife was out before Leander finished blinking. The blade found Nokhatar's reaching hand, opened a line of green blood across his palm, not deep, but clear. You don't touch me, Magra said. Her voice was different now. Not the rough, hesitant voice she used with Leander. This was command. The voice of someone who'd led war parties and expected to be obeyed. Not ever again. Nokhtar laughed. Actually laughed. There's the fighter I remember. You know what? I'll give you a choice. Come with me now, and I'll let the human live. Fight, and I'll make him watch every second of what I do to you before I kill him slow. Your decision. Leander saw it. Saw the exact moment Magra was going to give up. Going to walk back into chains because freedom for someone else mattered more than freedom for herself. Saw it in the way her shoulders started to drop, the way her grip on the knife loosened. No, Leander said. One word. But he said it the way you'd say it if your life depended on it. Because it did. Magra looked at him. He'll kill you. Maybe. But I didn't buy your freedom so you could give it back to keep me safe. He turned to Nokhtar. She stays. You leave. Or we see how good you are when you're fighting someone who fights back. Nokhtar looked between them, then shrugged. You got 3 days to get me my money or deliver the slave. After that, I stop being polite. And you really don't want to see what I'm like when I'm not polite. He left. Walked away like he had all the time in the world. Because he did. Because the law was on his side. Money was on his side. And violence was definitely on his side. Magra put her knife away. Her hands were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough to notice if you were paying attention. You shouldn't have done that, she said. Probably not. He wasn't bluffing. He'll kill you. He's killed for less. I know. Then why? Because some things are worth dying for, Leander said. Then quieter. And some people are worth fighting for, even when the fight's stupid and you're going to lose. She looked at him for a long time. Really looked, like she was seeing him for the first time. Or maybe seeing something she didn't want to believe existed. You're insane, she said finally. Yeah, probably. What do we do? Leander sat down heavily. Tried to think. 800 gold. He had 17 gold left. Even if he sold everything he owned, he might get to 50. The math wasn't mathing. I don't know, he admitted. But we've got 3 days to figure it out. Magra was quiet. Then, there's another option. What? I kill him. Magra, listen to me. She crouched down so they were eye level. I was a warrior before I was a slave. A good one. I've killed in battles, in pits, in dark alleys when owners decided they didn't need me alive. Nokhtar's dangerous. But so am I. I just forgot for a while. If you kill him, they'll execute you. The city guard, the law, they won't care that he was trying to enslave you. They'll just see an orc who killed a human. He's not human, he's orc. They'll see an orc who killed someone. The distinction won't matter to them. Then I'll run. Take my chances. And I'll never know if you made it. Leander met her eyes. I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if you died free or died in chains. And somehow both options feel like losing. She sat back. Frustrated. Angry. But also something else. Something that looked suspiciously like she gave a damn what happened to him. You're making this very difficult, she said. Good. You've made things difficult for me since day one. Fair's fair. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Tell me about your life. Before you bought a problem that can't be solved. So he did. Told her about growing up in a merchant family. About learning that people were basically the same everywhere. They wanted security, comfort, to know their kids would be okay. Told her about his parents dying in a fever. About traveling because staying in one place hurt too much. About being tired of moving but not knowing how to stop. And Magra told him about her clan. About hunting in mountains that touched the sky. About war songs and feast fires and a world where green skin wasn't wrong, it was. About being 13 and killing a mountain cat and thinking she was invincible. About being 14 and waking up in chains and learning she wasn't. They talked until dawn, until the sun came up on day 1 of 3, until they'd said everything and nothing, until they both knew that whatever happened next, they weren't going to face it alone. Esme arrived at noon with bread and news. The orc hunter's been asking about you, she said without preamble. Showed papers to the city guard. They're on his side, legally speaking. Boy, you've gone and bought yourself trouble. I know. Good. Knowing you're in trouble is the first step to getting out of it. She set down her basket. Now, let's talk about what we're actually going to do. We? Magra asked. Of course we. You think I let people eat my soup and then leave them to die? The Rosemary would never forgive me. Esme sat down at the table like she was settling in for a siege. You got 3 days and no money. But what you do have is something Noktar doesn't. What's that? Leander asked. You've got people who care whether you live or die. That's worth more than gold. You just have to be smart about it. What followed was 3 days of the strangest conspiracy Leander had ever been part of. Esme rallied the merchants she knew, the ones who operated in the gray spaces where laws got fuzzy, where goods moved without papers and questions weren't asked. She found them sympathetic ears, not because people loved orcs, but because people hated slavers, hated men like Noktar who wore stolen teeth and smiled while they worked. By day 2, they had a plan. Not a good plan, but a plan. They were going to fake Magra's death. It's insane, Leander said when Esme explained it. All the best plans are, Esme replied. The plan was simple in theory, complicated in execution. They'd stage an accident, make it look like Magra died trying to run. Noktar would collect the body, fake body, courtesy of some very illegal magic, and a very understanding necromancer who owed Esme a favor involving mint and personal questions she wouldn't elaborate on. While Noktar was busy with the fake body, Magra would be smuggled onto a ship heading north, to orc territories, to freedom that wasn't surrounded by walls. And what happens to you? Magra asked Leander. I'll be fine. Noktar wants you, not me. He'll kill you anyway, out of spite. Maybe, but you'll be free. That's what matters. That's not... She stopped, started again. You're the most frustrating human I've ever met. You know that? I've been told. Day 3 came too fast. They did the staging at dusk, made it look like Magra panicked, ran for the docks, made it look like she fell, hit her head, died quick. The body was good, disturbingly good. Even Leander flinched looking at it. Noktar arrived to collect his property, looked at the body, frowned. This is fake, he said. Leander's heart stopped. What? He tried to sound confused. She's dead. I can see a meat puppet made by someone who knows flesh magic. Noktar kicked the body. It didn't react like a real corpse would. Where is she? I don't... Noktar moved fast. Faster than something that big should move. He had Leander by the throat, lifted off the ground, before Leander could finish his sentence. Where is she? She's gone, Leander choked out. She ran. Hours ago. You're too late. Then I guess you're the consolation prize. What happened next, Leander would remember in fragments. The teeth of that necklace pressed against his face, the smell of old blood, Noktar's breath hot and rancid, the absolute certainty that he was about to die. Then, a roar, not a human sound, not even close. This was orc, pure and undiluted, the kind of sound that made cavemen check the cave entrance and brave knights reconsider their career choices. Magra hit Noktar like a mountain deciding to relocate. They went down in a tangle of limbs and rage. Leander fell, gasped for air, watched as 6 years of contained fury decided it was done being contained. Magra fought like someone who remembered what they were. Every move was practice, experience, violence refined into art. She didn't just fight Noktar. She fought every slaver who'd ever touched her, every owner who'd called her property, every human who'd looked at her and seen a thing instead of a person. And Noktar fought back. He was good, maybe even great, but he'd made a critical mistake. He'd thought Magra was the same scared slave he'd sold 6 years ago. She wasn't. The fight ended with Noktar on the ground, Magra's knee on his chest, her knife at his throat. The necklace of teeth lay broken on the ground, scattered like the lives they represented. You're going to leave, Magra said. Her voice was cold, controlled. You're going to tear up those papers. You're going to forget I exist, or I'm going to finish what I started. You'll hang for this, Noktar spat blood. Killing me won't solve anything. Maybe not, but it'll feel good. And after 6 years, that's enough. Magra, Leander's voice. Quiet. Don't. He'll come back. Then we deal with it when he does. But if you kill him, you're not free. You're just less trapped. That's different. She looked at Leander. The knife didn't move from Noktar's throat. You don't understand what he is. I understand that killing him makes you what he says you are. A monster. And you're not. You're a warrior. There's a difference. For a long, terrible moment, Leander thought she was going to do it anyway. Thought 6 years of rage was going to win. But then, slowly, she lifted the knife, stood up, looked down at Noktar like he was something she'd scraped off her boot. Get out of my city, she said, and if I ever see you again, I won't stop next time. Noktar got up, slowly. Everything about him screamed that this wasn't over, but he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. For now, he left, limping, bleeding, but alive. Magra stood there, shaking, the knife still in her hand. Leander walked over slowly, like you'd approach something wild that might spook. You okay? He asked. She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't even a particularly happy smile, but it was real. No, she said, but I'm free. That's better than okay. They left the city the next day. Leander sold everything he couldn't carry. His stock, his contacts, his careful merchant life. Sold it for ship passage north, to territories where green skin was just skin, where warriors were judged by their actions, not their color. Esme came to see them off, pressed herbs into Magra's hands. For the journey, mint for memory, rosemary for remembering what matters, and basil because it's lucky, and you're going to need all the luck you can get. Thank you, Magra said, and meant it. Don't thank me yet. You're heading into a whole new kind of trouble. Freedom's harder than chains sometimes. You have to decide what to do with it. Esme looked at Leander. You take care of her, boy. I think she's been taking care of me. Smart lad. You're learning. The ship left at dawn. Magra stood at the rail, watching the city shrink behind them. The bracelet on her wrist caught the morning light. Black iron and old runes, and proof that even when everything else was taken, some things could be kept. Regret buying me yet? She asked without looking at Leander. He thought about it, about the merchant life he'd given up, the security, the careful plans, about the fact that he was sailing to a place where humans were the minority and he had no contacts, no business, no plan. Ask me again in a year, he said. She laughed. It was a small laugh, rusty from disuse, but it was a start. In my clan, she said suddenly, when a warrior saves your life, you're bound to them. Blood debt. It's serious, unbreakable. I didn't save your life, you saved mine. Then I guess we're both bound. She looked at him finally. What do we do now? Now? Now we figure out what free actually means. Together. Together, she repeated, like she was testing the word, seeing if it fit. I could live with that. The ship sailed north, toward territory that didn't care about green skin or human prejudice, toward a future that wasn't written in bills of sale and ownership papers, toward something neither of them could name but both of them needed. Behind them the city faded into morning mist. Along with it faded Noktar, Gavril Thresh, 6 years of cages and chains, and a world that tried to make Magra less than what she was. She reached up, touched the bracelet on her wrist, felt the weight of iron and memory and proof that she'd survived. Not just survived, won. My father told me something, she said quietly. When he gave me this, he said, Magra, a warrior isn't someone who never falls. A warrior is someone who gets back up, every single time, until the world learns to stop betting against you. Smart man. He was. Died in the raid that got me captured. Went down fighting. Took 12 humans with him. There was pride in her voice, but also sadness. I used to think that was the only way. Fight until you die. Win or die trying. And now? Now I think maybe the bravest thing a warrior can do is survive. Not just survive. Choose to keep living, keep hoping, even when the world gives you every reason not to. She looked at Leander. Thank you for teaching me that. I didn't teach you anything. You already knew. You just forgot for a while. Then thank you for reminding me. They stood at the rail as the sun climbed higher. Two people who shouldn't have met, who definitely shouldn't have changed each other's lives, but did anyway, because sometimes the world doesn't care about shouldn't. It only cares about what actually happens. And what actually happened was simple. A man saw a person in a cage and decided that was unacceptable. And that decision, that small, stupid, impossible decision, changed everything. Not perfectly. There were still scars. Magra still flinched at loud noises, still slept with a weapon close, still woke up sometimes convinced she was back in the cage. Leander still wondered if he'd made the right choice. Still counted his depleted coin purse and thought about the life he'd traded. But they had something better than perfection. They had tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days stretching forward into a future nobody had written yet. Hey, Leander, Magra said after a long silence. Yeah? Your Rosemary talking friend was right. This is a whole new kind of trouble. Told you. But it's good trouble. The kind worth having. Yeah, he said, looking at the horizon where land was just starting to appear, green and vast and full of possibilities neither of them could imagine yet. Yeah, it is. If you're listening to this story, maybe you see something familiar in it. Maybe you know what it's like to be in a cage, or to see someone in one. Maybe you know what it's like to have to choose between safe and right, between comfortable and necessary. Here's what I know. The world's full of cages. Some are made of iron, some are made of laws, some are made of the casual cruelty of looking at someone and deciding what they are before they open their mouth. But the world's also full of people who decide cages are unacceptable, who see them and can't look away, who do stupid, impossible things, because doing nothing hurts worse. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, those stupid, impossible things change everything. Magra and Leander didn't fix the world. They didn't end slavery or racism or any of the big, terrible things that make life hard. But they fixed their small piece of it. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Fix our small piece. Help the person in front of us. Choose right over easy. And hope like hell that enough people do the same until cages become history instead of reality. Blood doesn't make you family. Laws don't make you property. And chains, no matter how strong, how legal, how inevitable they seem, chains can always be broken, if you're willing to try. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of impossible choices and unlikely heroes, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. And remember, the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting. It's choosing to see people where the world tells you to see monsters. Sometimes that choice changes one life. Sometimes it changes two. And sometimes, just sometimes, it changes the world. One choice at a time.